Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Amen.
Shabbat shalom.
Amen. Shabbat shalom.
Welcome back, everybody. Our second session will be getting to know the Messiah all over again. Hopefully better this time. Hopefully more pure understanding of who his personality really is, who his image really is, who he is. His Hebrew identity, his Hebrew language, his Hebrew culture, his expectation of redemption of mankind, his anticipation of restoration of creation to Edenic state, beauty and fruitfulness and shalom, fixing the world. Because knowing that way as opposed to how we got going through organized religion. Get to know him as he really is. And today we're going to take a big step in that regard, I believe. It's a hope anyway. Last week we left off in the upper room. And we talked about that a little bit briefly in the opening session, and I told you I couldn't separate these two. They're close to my heart. So in the upper room, we had Yeshua ending the upper room discourse, going into the upper room narrative where he was talking to the Holy One. He was in the courts of heaven, modeling what it's like to have a conversation in the courts of heaven to a real God, to a real King in the courts around 24 elders and 4 living creatures and the angels and the cherubim and the seraphim and the hosts of the heavens all around you, and being in that context, actually having a conversation with this God, not just making your wishes known. And so he said at the end, he said, my desire, Abba, my desire is that these that you've given me may be with me where I am, and that they may see my glory, see my glory. Okay, we ended it right there. And a lot of things happened after that. Very important things happened after that. That was the end of the night, and in the upper room, they left the room across the Kidron Valley. They went into the Garden of Gethsemane. Some of the stories you're going to be familiar. I'm not going to go through the details. The crucifixion, the arrest, the crucifixion, the trial, the crucifixion, the burial, the resurrection, the ascension, the post-resurrection appearances. All this stuff has happened. The death of James, the son of Zebedee, by beheading at the order of King Agrippa under the auspices of the Roman Empire involved in the day. Romans solidified government in Rome, and the empire turned into the dark empire. It was always pretty dark, but it got really, really dark in those days. And in those days, different emperors came and got more and more vile, and more harsh, and more profane. And the Roman Empire turned into a very dirty, dark place to live. And so James was the first to die of the group who had his head cut off. And one by one, over the next 60 years, Peter, Andrew, Matthias, or Matthew, Levi, Simon the Zealot, one by one, and Thomas. One by one, they were all martyred. All but one. And it's now 60-something years after the upper room. Almost happened. And now that statement, I wish they would be with me and that they would see my glory. Only one left in that group of 11 in that room with him. It's Johann John, is called the King James Version of English. John. His name was Johann. He's the one who leaned his head on the breast of Messiah during the upper room experience. He's the one who said, only he'd say about himself was, I'm the disciple that Yeshua loves. He's still alive, 60-something years later. He's been boiled in oil, according to tradition. He's been persecuted, tortured, but nothing will make him turn loose of the one who he leaned on his breast and the one who loved him, And he's become the leader of the organized, Paul said. Paul came along, rose up, died, got killed, right? Poisoned. And he's been gone for years, decades, gone, still alive. 80 something, maybe early 90s years old. 94 AD, Common Era. Old man. He is the face of the Nazarene movement. Christianity, as the world today likes to call it. But it wasn't Christianity then. It was just a movement of Nazarene. People who followed Nazarene, who followed his teaching of the Torah. And they did Sabbath, they did festivals, they did kosher laws. They did all the stuff that they did because that's who they were. And there's only one man who was the face of the entire movement, an old man in his 80s, was not even been boiled in oil, scarred from head to toe. Named Johann. And the emperor of the day, tell me who it was. Remind me who it was. Domitian. Emperor Domitian. Worst of the bunch. Worst of the bunch. Back during the time after Nero, they had instituted the Fiscus Judaicus because the Jewish people had a problem, and the Nazarene sect had a problem. They actually believed in one God and worshiped that one God and would not surrender that to anybody. They would not worship the emperor as God. They would not worship the Roman pantheon as gods. They would not abide by the feast schedule of the Romans. Feast of Saturnalia, the feast of Bacchus. They wouldn't abide by the Romans' calendar of pagan festivals. And they wouldn't follow the ways, and so they were regarded as problem children because they were too zealous for their God and for the Torah and for the ways of the Holy One. And now they adopted Fiscus Judaicus, which is the attack only on Jewish people, Hebrew people. Can you imagine if we did attacks only on Italian people in America? Everybody else is good, but those Italian people, we're going to get those guys. And not only are we going to get them, you know about this particular tax, the Fiscus Judaicus. It was attached to Hebrew people and Jewish people in particular, initially. But Domitian decided he was going to broaden that to the Nazarene sect. So now the Nazarenes are having to do it too. And what is this tax? It starts with 1/2 shekel per year, which went to the temple in Jerusalem before the temple was destroyed. That also happened in the interim. The temple in 70, 20 years before the temple was destroyed. And all the Jews were sent off into exile or killed. All their property was confiscated. There's no Jewish owned property in the land of Israel. It's all confiscated by the Roman government. It was tough years to live. This is the situation in which the kingdom of heaven grew, the Nazarene movement grew. Here we are now. The mission says, find me somebody to really put as make an example of. Get me somebody who's the face of that movement. So who are they telling it is? Johann. Get John. You get John, that'll take care of him. So they get John, they boil him in oil. This way he gets boiled in oil. And then that doesn't make him renounce, doesn't make him change his mind or heart or change his direction of teaching. And so they say, put him in prison, make him work he's 80-something years old or 90 years old, make him work in the rock quarries out on the island of Patmos, 30 miles off the coast of Asia Minor, Ephesus and all those cities of the area where the movement was mostly centered on. 30 miles in the water, out in the water, on a rock in a quarry. Here's an old man, 80-something years old, being forced to do day labor every day. Nothing else. Little did the mission know. He was about to unleash something.
Mm-hmm.
Because the stuff that the old man Yohanan believed and remembered was real. The person he talked about,
Mm-hmm.
the person he remembered leaning on his chest, he's real and he's alive.
Yeah.
And he's not going to let John die like that. And so what we have as we begin this book of Revelation, we go to the fast forward to the book of Revelation, 94 or so AD, the events happened, 95 or so they're recorded, brought down. And we find John on the Isle of Patmos. Physically exhausted, probably, perhaps thinking he's about ready to die. And he gets a visit from the one he last saw in the upper room or on the cross. Whenever he said he was asked to take care of Mary the rest of his life. And so Yeshua comes, but it is not the same Yeshua he knew in the upper room. Oh, it's the same one. He just doesn't look the same. He doesn't project the same. He's not low-level human being. He appears in glory and majesty. Abba, Father, may they be with me where I am and see me in my glory. Well, John seeing him in his glory. This has got to be the stories we're going to talk about in the next few weeks are about what it looks like, what it's like to be seen not just as a teacher, as a rabbi, or as a savior, but as a risen, ascended Messiah who we serve. Do you know who you serve? Do you know who we worship? Do you know who he is? I don't think people remember anymore. They know Christianity. They know church doctrine. But if they knew him, it would be totally different. If you ever see him high and lifted up, now, Yeshua's going to come, and he's going to John's going to hear just a voice. First, he's going to hear a voice. He said he was in there's so many key words, code words. He was in the spirit. He was Bet Ruach. On, quote, English, the Lord's Day. We don't have time to go into the details of all these little factual situations of what those key words mean, what they relate back to in the Torah and the prophets. We'll just assume it doesn't mean what you make it means. So he was, whatever Baruch, and on the Yom Adonai, the day of the Lord, he's there, and he hears a voice sound behind him. And the voice says, Ani ha'alef. Now, he doesn't speak in English. He doesn't speak in Greek. He doesn't speak in Aramaic. He's talking to his friend. He talks to his friend in the language of the friend. The language of the friend is Hebrew. Especially when he talks. So he says, Ani ha'alef. Ve'ani ha'alef. I am the Aleph. And I am. Yohanan has not seen anything yet. All he does is hear the voice. The voice. Ani ha'alef. Ve'ani ha'tah. I'm the Aleph. I am the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And more than that, though, I'm everything the Aleph represents. You think you're alone here, John? No, you know you're not alone. You think you're at the whim of Domitian, the emperor of Rome. You're here at my post. This is the post I have assigned you. Ani ha'alef. I am the and that's not all. I am.
Yes.
He goes on to say, I am Harishon. English we translate that as first. the premium, the primary. You know, in Spanish we call, what's a cousin? A primo. Cousin, the male cousin. Primo, prima. And you understand, there's something special about that person. This is your first cousin. This is a primo. And I guess it means literally first cousin, but you understand this is someone who's really related to you. So he says, I'm a primo. I'm your primo. I'm the beginning and the end. I am that, and I am and I will finish this thing. I started this thing. I was the beginning point of this thing. I'm the focus of this thing, and I'm going to finish this thing. I am the author and finisher of that. Now, this is what he's saying in the voice without a vision, without any spectacle of the eye, without any perspective. Just an old, tired man hearing a voice that he recognizes the voice, but it sounds more majestic. He sounds more authoritative. He sounds more powerful. When he hears, he says, Ani ha le. The Ani ha. Ani harishon. The Ani ha acharon. Something about that voice, something about those words. You say, it doesn't make any sense in English. But boy, does it make any sense if you're John. This is Yeshua talking. The one you leaned on the breast. You felt the sounds and the vibrations of his voice as he spoke when you leaned on his breast back in the upper room. And you feel those same vibrations, but they're multiplied 100,000 times. John heard him say, I am the Aleph and the Tav. And he says, I'm going to write this down. Because he's going to be told to write this down. Right around there. I'm going to write this down. And English speakers in the 21st century are going to say, what? What is he saying? What does he mean? I am the Aleph, and I am the Tav, and I am the first, and I am the last. He didn't say that. Ani ha-Aleph. Ani ha-Tav. And to John, he's sitting there saying, he's everything. My pain is not everything. My broken body is not everything. My death sentence is not everything. Your mission is not everything.
That's good.
The world is not everything. What I wish I had done differently is not everything. He's everything.
That's good.
First, last, in between. He authored it. He finished. He's going to finish it. It's not done yet. My life is not over yet because I'm 80-something, 90-something years old. Sentenced to a prison colony in a rock quarry on an island 30 miles away from land. My life is not over, and he hasn't even seen him yet.
That's good.
Well, here we are on the Isle of Patmos. Welcome to the vision of Yohanan. Chazon Yochanan. In this book, Yohanan sees Yeshua perhaps for the first time since the cross, or at least since the post-resurrection appearances. You don't know what kind of vision he had during those post-resurrection appearances. The day of Ascension. The Holy One visits him. There's a place, there's a moment, and he says this. He says, I am not of the Tav, I'm the first and last. And John turns around to see the voice. I love that. He turned around to see the voice. I can't see a voice. You can't see a voice.
Right.
But John could see this voice. This voice had substance and reality to it, but John would immediately recognize who it was that it was. So he turns around and he sees him, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. And he turns around and sees him, and he falls as if dead on the ground. And then there's that moment. He took his right hand, Yeshua, the risen, resurrected, ascended, glorified Yeshua, takes his right hand, reaches across the space and time and heavens to earth, reaches down with his right hand and physically touches him. Same touch he felt back 60 years ago, but more powerful now than ever before. Now, I've called this teaching, this series that we're doing, Getting to Know the Messiah All Over Again. And I hope you're getting to feel the picture. This is not here to teach you about the doctrine. I'll let you take care of that on your own time. I want to encourage you to get to know him again. To feel that hand on your shoulder. To hear that voice. To respond. Remember when he first talked to you, when you first heard his voice, when you first knew him, when you first fell in love with him, when you first got to understand what he's trying to do in your life. And get back to that again. But you realize, whatever you knew him then, he's more. He's more than that.
That's good.
So, he says, I, John, Yohanan, your brother and companion in the tribulation and the kingdom and the patience of Yeshua HaMashiach, was on the island that is called Patmos for the word of the Holy One, for the testimony of HaMashiach. Mm-hmm. It says, and I heard a voice, and I looked, and I turned to see the voice that spoke to me. And having turned, I saw. What did he see? He saw 7 golden lampstands, 7 menorahs, 7 burning lamps. And he saw one in the midst of the 7 lampstands, standing in the midst of these 7 lampstands, that was like unto the Son of, like the one he knew. He looked like Yeshua. He looked like the Yeshua he knew, but yet he was clothed with a garment down to his feet, and he was girded about the chest with a golden sash, those big wide golden sashes. And his head and his hair were white like wool, as white as snow. And his eyes. How many times had John looked at those eyes? How many times had he seen the pupils dilated and love coming forth out of those eyes? How many times over the course of the years he spent with him had he been enamored by those eyes, caught up with those eyes? He looks at those eyes, he says, their eyes like a flame of fire. I can't even, it's so bright, it's so brilliant. It's so, have you ever, you know how flames of fire are? You can't look away. You can't look away from a dancing flame of fire. It says, he looked into his eyes and he was captivated. One glance of your eyes, you know, like Song of Solomon. Mm-hmm. He said his eyes were like a flame of fire, dancing, moving. And his feet were like fine brass, as if refined in a furnace, shining gold, bronze, beautiful colors, wisdom. And his voice, his voice was like the sound of many waters. My favorite place at the ranch is where the hills come together and they go down to the river. And on all sides, rivulets of water come down and they join together in a valley, a little area. And the valley has been washed out, so it's clean. And so when the water's hitting that rushing water that goes down toward the creek, it's like a roaring sound. And it's coming from all directions. I got a spot that I stand. It's on high ground in the middle of all that. Mm. You wait out and on the high ground, you stand there, and all around you is the power, the pulsing of this water and the sound of it rushing. And you hear it coming from off the top of the hills. This is the north and south, east and west. You hear it coming. You hear it running all the way down, which is only about 50 feet to the river. It hits the water, the shallow water against it. His voice was like that. Mm. Same voice that he heard 1,000 times. But this time, now, in glorified state, his voice is like the sound of many waters rushing. And he had in his right hand 7 stars. And out of his mouth went a sharp 2-edged sword, and his countenance was like the sun shining in strength. What just happened to Yohanan? Is he having visions? Is he drunk? Is he exhausted? Is he dying? You know, what's happening to him? And he tries to explain these things, put these things in writing. And it's like, no, that's not enough. That's not a good explanation of what I just saw. But I got to tell you something. You're going to have to live with it. But one thing you should be getting by this stage is this is not an ordinary man. This is not even the one I knew and loved as he taught as a rabbi for those years. And he is someone wonderful, special. His countenance like the sun shining in his strength. And when I saw him, I fell at his feet as dead, but he laid his right hand on me. And he said to me, Lo tira. Now there's a way you say the Hebrew. You say it like a father brushing the hair back on his young son as he lays down with a fever in bed. Lo tira. Lo tira. It's all right. Don't be afraid. Lo tira means don't be afraid in literal Hebrew. Don't fear. No fear. No fear. No fear. Now this lo tira means something to a Hebrew. Or al tira is the way it would be prayed. Al tira in the context. Al tira, you might know where we heard this the first time. It's Genesis chapter 15. Abraham, his giving up. You can't have any babies. They promised babies, promised seed. It ain't happening. Decades have happened. Nothing's happening. Sarah's dry as a bone. He's dry as a bone. I guess it's just going to have to be Eleazar, the servant, the Syrian guy. He's going to be my heir. I guess I'll just have to make this work somehow. And God appears to him. And in a vision, he says, Abraham, al tira. It's all right. Don't be afraid. And he says, Ani mogen lach. I am your shield of protection. And I am your exceeding great reward. Not your heirs that you're going to have, not the promises that I'm giving. I myself am the heir. So this is whenever he says al tira for a Hebrew, it goes back to Genesis chapter 15 and our father Abraham and the way this whole thing started out. And what happened after he said it? Remember what happened in Genesis 15 after he said this? He showed him visions of the future. In a vision, he showed Abraham visions of the future and says, your descendants, your seed, will be enslaved 400 years. But at the end of 4,400 years, I will judge the oppressors and I will bring you back to this land. And he showed the entire future of the Hebrew people right there in this, by virtue of this al tira vision. So John's hearing, and when he hears that word al tira, that phrase al tira, it's like, it really is going to be okay. I remember when my oldest daughter was like 13, 12, 13. And she was, not as pretty as she wanted to be at that stage in her life. And she was having relational difficulties and stuff that 12, 13-year-old girls have. She didn't know who she was. And she'd come home crying from school. And I'd sit there and talk to her, and we'd have long conversations, and I'd laugh with her, try to get her to laugh, and just talk. She kind of calmed down eventually, and she kind of put her head on my shoulder, and she said, Dad, you know what I like about you? I said, well, no, honey, what do you like about me? I said, you tell me it's going to be all right, and I believe it. That was the best moment of my fatherhood, I think. The best moment that I had the ability to tell her it's going to be okay. And she believed it. Now, this is what al tira, the message of Yeshua to John was like. Son, it's going to be all right. Matter of fact, it's going to be good. Altia. And so we have this message. He says, this one he says, I am the first and I am the last. I am the ultimate source. And that in itself is a quote from Isaiah 46. We haven't got 44. We haven't got time to talk about all that. So we have this promise in the visual experience. He sees the person who says, I am he who lives. And that's an interesting phenomenon because the last time John would have seen him would have been on the cross or maybe the day of the resurrection. I am he who lives, but I was dead. Though I was dead, I live. And behold, I have hidden life. I have Haye Olam. We talked about Haye Olam last week, the Hebrew thought processes of a life that is beyond the veil, that is as real as this life, and is coexistent with this life, but you have to be able to have an access point to get into the heavenly realms, to see what's going on in the heavenly realms as well as be here on earth. I have the keys, he said, of Sheol, of the place of inquisition and questioning. Now, I know this doesn't go along with a lot of Christian philosophy. This is what he said. I have the keys of Sheol. There's a place. There's something after death that you go to where there's a place of questioning and like appearance before the judgment seat. You have this place of testing and questioning. And he says, I have the keys of Sheol and I have the keys of Mavet, of death. And what is death in Hebrew is not physical cessation of the breathing or the heartbeat. Death is whenever you are separated from the Spirit of God and can't get back. That's it. And you will not get back, not in your flesh. It's like you have a modem inside you, and we'll use the internet analogy. God's like the internet, and we have a modem inside of us, and all we have to do is get the modem on right and get it programmed right, and we can connect with the internet. But if our modem dies, we lose connection with the internet. If the neshama within us and the nefesh within us, if the soul within us dies, we lose our interface. He's still left as we just can't contact him anymore. That is Mavet, that is death. And Yeshua says, I hold the keys to Sheol, which is your place where you'll go, and to Mavet. In other words, you're never going to be disconnected from earth.
That's good.
We hear the word key, are we thinking about key, or is it something else?
Yeah. We see this, right? Because of the way we do locks. They didn't do locks like this in the ancient world. They had a mechanical system where interlocking different pieces of wood or metal, and you had a certain nail or something you would stick in there with a certain keying, and it was somewhat like a key, but it wasn't a key. So we think about a keychain. Like I hold a keychain. I'm the guy with the janitor with the keychain. That's not what he's really saying. He says, I know how to open all the doors. And I have the technique and the touch to be able to open any of these doors to. Yeah. Yeah, authority and access. All those things are good ways to put it, I think. So, okay. So I have the keys to these things. Now, you're John. I can't even imagine. I'm trying to imagine. I was preparing this lesson, Tony. I'm trying to imagine what would it have been like to be that close to death and persecuted for that long. Do you know the responsibility he carried? He's the oldest surviving member of the apostle team. He is the face of the Nazarene movement. He's the one that the people in Ephesus and Thyatira and Pergamum and Smyrna and the other cities there, Laodicea, he's the one they all rely upon to have the truth, to have the wisdom, to give the guidance, to be the face, the vocalization of the ways of the Holy One. How do you carry that? Everybody else is dead. And you're old. And your body's worn out. and you're under the thumb of the mission, you think, you feel like, it looks like. They tell you when to go to work, they tell you when to stop work, and they tell you where to sleep and where not to sleep, and you can't go on your own, you can't do all these things, and now you hear the voice of the Holy One again, the voice of the Messiah again, and he says that he holds the key to all these things. How do you feel? How do you respond if you're John? How do we respond to who he really is? I was blessed, I think, because I was not a church kid. I really wasn't a synagogue kid. So I really had no concept of, other than the fact I knew somebody was out there. I just didn't know who. I was drawn to him, but I didn't know who he was or how to get there. So at age 16, after a failed suicide attempt, I'm in my car, my 64 Chevrolet Impala, and I'm getting ready to start and drive off, and all of a sudden y'all know the story, he's in the car with me. He comes into my world. He had to, or I would have died. I would have done it again. He came in my world, and he changed my world. And I knew him then, and he was everything to me then. I didn't know this much doctrine or theology. I couldn't have argued or debated a single point of Scripture. I didn't know any Scripture. But I knew him. I mean, I was just getting to know him, but I felt like I knew him. He knew me. And I from that point forward, it was Jesus movement days, and so it was a little easier. It was all focused on him. We weren't going into doctrines and arguing theology and putting stuff on Facebook about faith. We were walking with him, talking to him. Everything was a conversation, running conversation with Yeshua. Everywhere we went. And now I go back and I look years later, decades later, I wonder, where did I lose most of that? Where did it become church? Religion. Where did it become stuff I know, stuff I could argue, stuff I could tell you what's wrong with what your theology is? Where did it become that? As opposed to a living, breathing relationship with a living, breathing God, man. So, John, I believe, had to be awakened by this. An old body with an old mind suddenly alive again. And, you're going to see him write stuff that blows people's minds to this day, will blow people's minds forever, I presume. And they won't be able to explain it because it's, however tired he was, however hurt he was, wounded he was in every different way, what he wrote was pure revelation. That's they even call it Revelation, the book of Revelation. So, the voice says, write the things which you have seen, and the things which are, and the things that will take place after this. Now, immediately, the human mind says, wait a minute, how can I write the things that will take place after this? I don't know what's going to happen after this. No one knows what's going to happen after this, except for Aleph, Ani, Aleph, and Ali, Ani Hatav, Ani Harishon, Ani Acharon. So, in other words, in this encounter, he's going to experience what's going to happen in the future. Like Genesis 15, like the whole book of Revelation is going to be. He says, write the things that will take place after this. The mystery of the seven Kokavim. Now, you wonder why the vision involves 7 candlesticks and 7 stars. Anybody ever wonder this stuff, or just read it because that's the way it said? I mean, Yeshua could have appeared and should have shown him visions of anything he wanted to. He didn't have to use 7 candlesticks and 7 stars. But he's now going to tell him, he says, the reason I'm using, the mystery behind this. He says, the mystery behind this is that the 7 stars kokavim that you saw in my right hand, and the 7 golden lampstands or menorahs is this. The 7 kokavim, the 7 stars, are the angels of the 7 kehilot. Now, this is again Hebrew. I know in English it probably says churches. And we have a mindset, we have a connotation, a belief system based upon a whole system that doesn't exist at this time Yeshua is talking. That there's churches out there, buildings out there like this. And there's pastors and elders and bishops and there's doctrines and there's doctrinal statements and there's services and there's schedules, meeting schedules, and there's ministry activities and there's some sort of denominational base, or maybe not, but we think we know what church is. And we do know what church is, we just don't know what Kehillah is. We don't know what he's talking about here. What Yeshua is talking about is not church, not as we know it. Nothing even resembling the church that we know it. As a matter of fact, he would have looked at you with a deadpan look and say, you're way off, you're dreaming of stuff that doesn't exist. Kehillah, what's a Kehillah? There's 7 Kehillot, plural, and there's angels of these Kehillot. Now, we need to get back into the issue of the culture and the language that Yeshua would use, because he was a Hebrew. And the Torah is the basis of the language and is the substance of how to define the purity of the language. Now, first of all, I need to, somebody have their Bibles with them, and if you would, Deb, look at Daniel chapter 12. I want to ask you to find Daniel chapter 12 and read verses 1 through 4.
At that time, Michael, the great prince, who stands guard over the sins of the people, will rise. There will be eternal distress such as never occurred since the beginning of nation until then. But at that time, your people, everyone who is found written in the book, will be spared. Multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to everlasting life, and others to shame and everlasting. Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heaven expanse, and those who turn many to righteousness will be like the stars forever and ever. But you, Daniel, close up the words and seal the book until time of the end. Many will run back and forth.
Now, if you know this is part of the culture and the understanding of John, and Yeshua knows he's of that culture, he is saying to John, this is that. The stars, this is what you are called to be, and many others are called to be in this day. They're like the stars of the heavens, and it will awaken. So he says, these who are wise will shine like the brightness of the firmament, and those who are turn many to righteousness will be like the stars forever and ever. He says, and the 7 menorah that you saw are the 7 kehilot. So what is kehillah? This is part of the beauty of something John knew, but we don't know. We have never seen this operate. Kehillah is a Hebrew noun which comes from the verb kahal. Kahal means to call forth, to call up, to call together, to call for a purpose and a mission, to call for a stand, to call together for that purpose, to a mission. So a kehillah is a group of called people who are called to a mission, to a stand, to a position. Now, let's go to the exile and the diaspora, which has happened in the interim between the upper room and this conversation. One of the things that happened is that the Hebrews had been banished from Jerusalem and Israel. All their property had been taken, and they've been sent out in slavery to the various different nations. Now, there is a protocol that is followed when a Hebrew set of families goes and sets up a new community, a new family life in a foreign community, in an exile community. If you ever watched Fiddler on the Roof, you understand something about this. A little bit about it, because you see it operates. There's a community within a community.
The Hebrew community is a community within a community. So if you have Smyrna, you have a Hebrew community within the community of Smyrna. If you have Pergamum, you have Texarkana, you have Memphis, wherever it is, if you have a group of Hebrew families there, you have a Kehillah. Those raised up by the Holy One to be kind of an informal network of leaders in the community. And you have certain responsibilities when you go into a community like that, when you begin to open a community like that. When you go into diaspora, the first thing, anybody know what the first thing the Hebrew men are supposed to do? Get together and form a minyan. Does anyone know what a minyan is? Minyan is 10 men who will pray. Who will pray regularly, daily. 10 men who will pray regularly before, after work, or whatever the case may be, at least 3 days a week, if not every day. A minyan. It has to be 10 or more. Why does that be 10? Why does that be 10? Because Abraham had a conversation with the creator of the universe in chapter 18 of Genesis. And he said, would you destroy the wicked with the just? What if there were 50 righteous? 40, 30, 20, 10? What if there were 10? No, Avram, son, Al-Tirah. I wouldn't destroy it if there were 10. If there were 10 presuming to be righteous. So this minyan, the developing of a minyan is the first thing. And it's from different families, men of different families, different ages after you reach bar mitzvah age. The second thing in a community that must do is operate a mikvah. They must dig a mikvah, provide a place for there to be, what is a mikvah? English, American and Western world, we call it a baptism tree. It's not sacramental. It's not a sacrament like the Christian world develops it. It's designed to fulfill the need to cleanse and purify with living water. There's something about the living water and the surrender to it, the going under it, the voluntary surrender to the water that says, I'm going to be born, die, and be born again at different stages of life. And so this is part of the lifestyle phase of the Hebrew people is you can't have a Hebrew community unless you have a mikvah. Because the women have to do this once a month. Because they are going back into starting life again. Starting the reproductive cycle again. Or they want to do this and be honoring to be fruitful and multiply. So there's that. And there's every other incident of sickness or whatever, they come and be revived. So the minyan and the mikvah. And the third thing is a place of counsel. A group of people who can be relied upon as counselors. To resolve disputes in the community, to represent the community in the larger community, because sometimes the interests don't coincide with the Hebrew people with the pagans around them, the world around them. To distribute charity, who decides who gets what? Who decides what poor person gets the most and what widow gets the most and what foreigner gets the most and what fatherless orphan gets the most? Who distributes tzedakah or for charity? Who arranges the marriages and prepares the weddings? Make sure the wedding can take place and be a celebration of the covenant being committed from one to another. Who protects kashrut? There has to be a butcher. Part of the minyan, part of the group of the kehilot must be a butcher who knows how to butcher halachically, according to the Torah, and not cause undue pain and not pollute the meat that's going to be eaten, the flesh the animal is going to be eaten, with other things of the world. So everyone has to have a butcher, and they have to have a group of people, committees assigned to sit shiva. Sit in shiva means when somebody dies in your community, they have to find a way to transition the family, the bereaved family, into health again and the restoration again. So for 7 days, the family sits shiva, and people bring them food and sit with them and weep with them over that 7-day period. Somebody has to organize the shiva. So they do that. That's the Kehillah's responsibility. To oversee the education of the children. Now, the family household is supposed to be where you educate the children, but to oversee it, to make sure it's being done, make sure it's being effectively, correct any mistakes in it, is the responsibility of the Kehillah, the group of organized people. so that they can, the obligations of the covenant will be brought forward year after year, generation after generation. Okay, so that's a kahila. So he says there are 7 kahilot in Asia Minor that you're very familiar with that actually hold the future of the Nazarene movement in their hands. That's why the 7 are mentioned, the places they're mentioned. These 7 hold the future of the Nazarene movement in their hands. How well they do will determine how well the Nazarene movement does in the rest of the world. That's why he's putting so much effort and investment in this time. He says the 7 menorah are the 7 kahilot, and they're like lights in the sky. Now he's going to go on. He's going to talk about Ephesus. He's going to talk about Smyrna. He's going to talk about Pergamum. He's going to talk about Thyatira. He's going to talk about Sardis. He's going to talk about Philadelphia. He's going to talk about Laodicea. He's going to have special messages of correction and concerning commendation and inspiration to each one of those 7 kahilot. Because you see, wherever we are, our kahilas don't always do it just right. Sometimes we get off. And he's in charge of it all. He is the Aleph and he is the Tav, and he is the one in charge of it all. He wants to see it to its conclusion, so he's going to have periodical reviews. That's the 7 letters to the 7, quote, churches, as we've read about, or to the families of the kahila of each of these different locations. Here's what we need to do, because this whole future of the Nazarene movement depends upon you. So how will we make the changes? Yeah, Marcy.
These letters written to the councilmen, are they for every member of the kahila, or what about that part of it?
They are addressed to the angels, the messengers, the Malachim. Malachim are the ones who are responsibly and basically in charge, who are communicating the divine messages to the field. So indirectly, they go to everybody. But they're directly giving address to the angels. Angels have the process. Angels being human messengers.
Did the Sanhedrin fit into that?
Well, the Sanhedrin is something we have in Israel. Israel, we've been kicked out of Israel. We're in exile. So the Sanhedrin is really irrelevant. It's not irrelevant. Let me say that. For this conversation, and Sanhedrin. Realize when we talk about the Nazarene movement, I'm not talking about all of Judaism.
Kahila, Tahila? How do you spell the Kahila or Tahila?
Start from the right. Kuf, Hey, Lamed, Hey. English. K-E-H-I-L-L. And you want to pluralize and make plural with the I at the end of the O-T. Kahilot. Hey. Yeah, K. I know I'll make crossing and arrows in there. Each one of these Hebrew letters has an English equivalent to it in this sounding out verbalization. Yeah, right. And they're reversed. You see the Hebrew is right to left, and English is left to right. But you go back there. Yeah. Kuf, Hey, Lamed, Hey. From Kahal, which is the verb root, which means to call forth. Sit in place. At post.
Is it kind of line up with the verse 4, like our today's parsha? Like today's parsha, when you verse 4?
Yeah, you verse 4.
Are we talking about kind of the same?
And that's what's happened in the diaspora. Is we've been sent out in the name. When you go out. When you're sent out into the diaspora, when you're down in the exile, as they are, and form these communities, and this is how you perpetuate. How you perpetuate the covenant. Comments or questions? I want to spend
want to do 1 week on the 7-Eleven. Because I don't want to make this a doctrinal teaching. I don't want to parse it so deeply that we lose sight of what he's really saying. So I'm going to try to do it. I may not be able to be successful, but I'm going to try to do all 7 of those next week. Which you like, because it's going to be a challenge because there's a lot to say.
It's gonna be a sign and a wonder.
But the real question I'm posing to you all before we get there is, what do you think he's trying to do? What is the objective? What's the end? He's not just writing letters. He's not just got to write things. He's trying to accomplish an objective. And his objective is now aimed at 7 different geographical regions of Asia Minor, that would be the seabed for the entire Nazarene movement. They would become all Latin and Roman Christianity. He's going to feed into that. That's something he wants to do. Course correction, bit of course correction, bit of inspiration, but mostly he's going to inject himself. This is where we get lost. When we know all about itself. Maybe we're even doing some of the good works. So he's going to inject himself through his words. Through John's writing, he's going to inject himself into each one of those cases. And he's going to empower it to make a difference. Now, even today, it's interesting, if you take a tour in Turkey, it's not a Christian nation like Jewish nation. It's an Islamic nation. But if you go to Turkey, they will take you on a tour. A bus tour of all these 7 different physically rooms for those there. And they know how important these 7 things are. Well, hopefully we'll be for another generation. Some of our families. Okay, any other questions?
Kind of a dumb question, but what would be the difference between the word on the board and Vayikra? Because doesn't Vayikra mean "and he called"?
Yes.
So
Vayikra is a personal appeal. Call upon you. Call upon you to respond to my voice in this movement. A call is for the entire group to come up and stand and take your position. So it's not just a personal appeal on a certain level. Arrive. A call, which means that for a great number of people are actually going to see it having not all for ourselves, all for one. This is about the community. Covenant.
Being called out of the ways of the world to hear something else from above.
Right. It's a very deep call because you have to leave where you are to go where you're going. And a call means you can't keep doing the jump rope going around. Leave it's normal, it's okay. It's not about going ahead of you now. It's about the call. It's to leave behind the stuff that's not working with nature. Step above it, higher than that, and represent the kingdom you represent. So I guess it's all of those things that involve leaving the virtue, so I like the gospel again, like the gospel and said, we'll find out who you really are. We'll know who you really are. Yes, that's part of the first of all, let go.
go, God is adding to the numbers and the force and the authority.
Yeah, well, yes, and I'm trying to rephrase it in such a way that I'm trying to think of an example out of the employment world. Okay, try to find an example somewhere. When you go to work your first day on the job, you're really not very qualified. You may have a good heart, you may have a good mind, you may have good preparing and training, good schooling, you're not really good at that job. And so you're not going to be put in a supervisory role that first day. More than likely, probably a good idea. You're not going to be given a high level of authority and responsibility that first day. Because you kind of get used to being underneath you. But once you do it a few times, you learn a few techniques, you learn through how what works, what doesn't work, you get a little skill built up, you get a little confidence built up, a little insurance, a little overlooking approach to it. Suddenly they start putting more responsibility on you. You get higher title, you get higher job responsibilities, you get higher pay, hopefully, as the case may be, and you begin to handle stuff you couldn't handle before. I'm using this as an example, as an illustration, and how that's the way it works for the kingdom. First, you just reporting for duty. Here I am. That's the job. Here I am. I'm sitting out away from the way the world thinks right now. I'm not listening to the news right so much. I'm not getting all fired up about what's happening on social media or on the news today. I'm listening for you. Here I am. I report for duty. And at first, the Holy One says, good. Look at that. Let's go out to the report. Let's get prepared. But gradually, what you don't understand is I've got a plan for you to work yourself into this working system we've got here. You're going to become one of the faces of this enterprise. But to do that, you've got to have walk through some stuff and work with some people, learn how to work with people, even though you may be different after different ideas. That's what happens when we come home. We come together and come home, not because we all realize it, because we're all doing the same goal. We're all working with the same goal, the same objective, and the same one who's driving us, calling us to do it. So we may totally disagree and dislike from the people in our home. I'm getting love. But that's okay, because that's not the important thing. How we feel about it is not our important thing. We should how we feel about objective, goal, plan, and the overall scheme of that mind. Yes. Maybe we've gone way too far into the illustration. Sometimes I over-explain this.
It's kind of this is how alcohol starts, you know, because the community is being inhabited or whatever, a city. God's people move into a city or an area, and we get with another person of like mind, you know, and Torah, and who hold to the testimony of Jesus Christ and keep the commands. And we find other people that are doing that, and before long, you know, we have a kahal, you know. But when those two are gathered together, He is in the midst, blessing that. Yeah.
So, the overall takeaway, I'm going to ask you guys, what do you feel the takeaway from today?
We covered a lot of ground. I'm going to see who's picking up what. Anybody? Who's tracking? Are you tracking?
Who wants to go for tracking?
It's a lot.
Yeah, I can tell you got something that you track.
It's too much. It's all here, but like the words just don't come out. I think this revelation of or this awareness of John literally seemingly knocking on death's door, you know, just looking like maybe even moments to live. And here the resurrection and the life comes to him and says, you know, don't look at your condition. Don't look at what you're going through. Don't assess this for something the way you see it in the natural. Look at me, look at the voice, hear what I'm saying. You still have purpose. There's still everything you are about is still ahead of you. I mean, to me, that I can walk away from the most desperate of situations now and go, it doesn't matter if I'm 70 or 80 or 90. It doesn't matter what the doctors say. It doesn't matter what the bank account looks like. There is still purpose, and there is the plan of God for you is still yet to even be written and spoken and said. I don't know. That really moved me, that he is knocking on death's door and his greatest thing is still yet to be done.
It reminds me of Moses' last days, when he knew that he was coming to the end, and okay, what are the last words that I need to leave before I go?
Yes. Yeah.
Here's the fascinating thing. On this something in the 90-something years, he's not going to die with that. He's going to be released from Patmos. He's going to be taken back to Ephesus, and Thyatira, and Pergamum, and Smyrna, and everyone in Laodicea, and all these. And he's going to spend the rest of his life circulating between those 7 big folks. And as a 100-year-old man, teaching the thing that he saw on that island. And he's going to write 3 letters. In addition to the Revelation, in addition to the gospel he wrote about before it all happened, he's going to write 3 letters, 1 John, 2 John, 3 John. And as you watch the letters, you're spending time watching reading those letters. They evolve, and yet they devolve. From the beginning, he's speaking so eruditely and so intelligently. At the end, he's almost babbling. Brothers, children, dear children, love one another. It's more simple. Love him and love one another. Love him and love one another. Don't get concentrated on idols. Don't get concentrated about theory and doctrine. I love him and love one another. 100-year-old Ryan Third John. This is the beautiful part about it. He thought he was over with. Like Abraham, when he didn't have babies. Not over with. But he didn't know it was over.
Well, this is the takeaway I'm getting from it. The Tehillah, the Kahal, moving from the personal call of God on your life into that, growing into that. And what my brother said about where 2 or 3 are gathered in his name. Well, if you think about it, no 2 people can be perfectly aligned in their thinking, in their personalities. But he is in the midst of us, his power, his Holy Spirit. It's like having a personal interpreter to bring everything of God's way of thinking. Yeah. And to grow us up into that so we can do what is absolutely impossible for a group of people to do.
Yes, ma'am.
What she said reminded me of Acts when they received the Holy Spirit and they all spoke different languages and they all understood what they were saying and they were all in one accord by the Holy Spirit, I guess.
Okay, good start on the Revelation or you should all over again.
Yeah, real good.
Shabbat shalom. I'll see y'all next week.
Shabbat shalom.